Carl Jung never used the term avoidant attachment. That clinical language came decades after his death. But within his extensive writings on psychology, the unconscious, and the architecture of the human psyche, Jung articulated ideas about emotional withdrawal, individuation, and the shadow self that, when applied to modern understanding of avoidant attachment, are not just relevant, but controversially profound. What Jung would say about avoidance is not what most people want to hear. It challenges the popular narrative that avoidants are simply wounded people who need more patience and understanding. Jung would argue something far more unsettling, that the avoidant is not running from others, but from themselves, and that this flight is not a trauma response, but a refusal of the fundamental human task of becoming whole. The shadow the avoidant refuses to face. Jung's concept of the shadow, the repository of everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves, is deeply relevant to avoidant psychology. The avoidant maintains a conscious self-image built entirely on independence, emotional sufficiency, and the absence of need. But in their shadow lives everything that contradicts this image: the desperate longing for connection, the terror of abandonment, the profound need for love that they cannot consciously admit possessing. Jung would argue that the avoidant's rejection of intimate relationships is fundamentally a rejection of their own shadow, a refusal to integrate the parts of themselves they find most threatening. Every time they push someone away, they are not protecting themselves from another person. They are protecting their conscious self-image from the shadow that genuine intimacy would force them to acknowledge. Jung's controversial position would be that avoidant behavior is not primarily a response to past trauma, but an active, ongoing refusal of self-knowledge. They do not avoid others, they avoid themselves, the persona that became a prison. Jung's concept of the persona, the mask we present to the world, explains how the avoidant became trapped in their own performance. The persona of the self-sufficient, emotionally independent person was perhaps once a necessary adaptation to an environment that did not accommodate vulnerability. But Jung would argue that the persona, when mistaken for the whole self, becomes a prison. The avoidant has fused with their persona so completely that they can no longer distinguish between the performance of not needing anyone and the actual self that longs for connection. Jung's controversial opinion would be that this fusion is not victimhood, but unconscious choice. The avoidant keeps the persona intact because dismantling it would require confronting the authentic self beneath it. And that authentic self is full of needs, fears, and longings they have spent their entire life denying. The shadow work required is not about healing wounds from the past, but about having the courage to be fully human in the present. Individuation requires what they most fear. Jung's life work centered on individuation, the process of becoming fully, authentically oneself by integrating all aspects of the psyche, including and especially those aspects most vigorously denied. For the avoidant, individuation is not possible through continued self-isolation. Jung would argue that their pattern of emotional withdrawal is not individuation, but its opposite, a fragmentation that keeps them perpetually incomplete. True wholeness, in Jungian terms, requires the integration of vulnerability, dependency, and the capacity for genuine intimacy. These are precisely the qualities the avoidant has exiled from their conscious experience. Jung's most controversial position would be that the avoidant's suffering is not the consequence of being hurt by others, but the consequence of their refusal to complete the work of becoming whole. They are not broken by the world. They are halted by their own resistance to the full experience of being human, the anima and the projection of what they cannot accept. Jung's theory of the anima, the inner feminine aspect of the male psyche, representing relatedness, emotionality, and connection, and the animus in women, provides another lens through which to understand avoidant behavior. The avoidant has repressed their anima or animus so thoroughly that when they encounter someone who embodies these qualities, they project their own unconscious desires onto that person. They are not really attracted to you. They are attracted to the parts of themselves they cannot access, parts they have projected outward, because owning them internally feels impossible. Jung would say, this is why the avoidant idealizes from a distance and devalues up close. The projection is most powerful when the person is unavailable for full inspection. Once you are too present, the projection fails, and the avoidant is left confronting that what they wanted was never really you, but the lost parts of themselves they were seeking in you. This is Jung's most unsettling insight, that avoidant love is often unconscious self-seeking, and genuine intimacy threatens that seeking, because genuine intimacy demands that you finally find those parts within yourself rather than outside. Why Jung would say the solution is not more patience. The popular narrative around avoidant attachment suggests that the right partner with enough patience can provide the safety that allows the avoidant to open up. Jung would find this narrative dangerously misguided. He would argue that no amount of external patience can substitute for internal confrontation. The avoidant does not need someone to wait longer or love more carefully. They need to face their shadow, dismantle their persona, and undertake the painful work of individuation that no other person can do for them. Jung's controversial opinion would challenge everyone who loves an avoidant. You cannot be their therapist, their healer, or their safe container for shadow work they refuse to engage with. The avoidance healing is not a relationship project, but a solitary reckoning with the self they have spent their entire life running from. Until they stop running, no relationship, however patient or skillfully managed, can give them what they are actually seeking.